This presentation is for revision purposes for the higher art and design expressive response question. We're going to focus on the words colour, techniques, viewpoint, and we're looking at Solitaire by Susan Abbott. I recommend that you make sure you're familiar with the revision guides for the prompt words in this question. These are the covers of each of those notes. So if we focus on colour first of all, the reddish and pinkish hues are actually not very warm. They're more on the colder end of the spectrum. And this is really helpful for creating a harmonious painting. So that's to say that that pinkish hue, those redder hues of colour, they are actually blending or in harmony with the much stronger, colder colours of the purples and the blues and the green, just because they are on the colder side of the spectrum. Okay? The advantage of creating a harmonious painting is it allows viewer's eye to roam around a painting really easily and just sort of gently and smoothly look around a painting and pick out focal points. Your evidence for harmony just needs to be quite simple. Just tell them that you can see this a range of this color scheme on the left, in the midground, and in parts of the right hand side as well, and and let them know that your eye roams around and it makes it easier to pick out little bits of detail. Okay? You should be familiar with the term advancing color and receding color, and you should be familiar with the idea that blues recede. There's a great little focal point created in this painting up in the top right with the yellow advancing flower against the blue jug. So you just tell them that the artist has used advancing colours, receding colours to create strong focal points. You just give the flower in the vase the jug as a piece of evidence, and you just tell them that it creates a more visually pleasing painting with strong visual impact. And again, I don't really mind you giving different examples and talking about the same method if you do it in a way that's interesting. I mean, another one where I can see advancing and receding colour being used is on the book with the upside down book with the figures. Now remember, if colour is one of the prompt words and tone isn't, you can still create a similar answer by discussing saturation and hues. So a hue is a purer colour, and saturation is to do with how intense or desaturation is if the intensity has been lowered of the colours. This painting is a great example of playing around with the saturation of the colour to create focal points. So what I mean to say is that a lot of the colour is desaturated. Mainly that's the pinks have um, uh, been been lowered in intensity. And then for the blues and the purples and the greens, intensity has been increased with the saturation going up. So try and find a focal point and that you think that the saturation is up on and add that to your answer. Techniques then. The techniques I would hope you'd find really easy. It's what most of you are trying to do in your expressive. It's a fine, realistic, very controlled brushwork. Don't forget to explain that precise technique allows to create really strong focal points, such as the stems of the tulips. Now, I discussed saturation and desaturation earlier. This is also linked to the technique of how she controls her water. So to get it more desaturated, she's added more water, and she's used less water to create more of an opaque opacity, which has got more of a saturation to it in terms of brightness. Let's reuse a focal point from earlier, the yellow flower on the blue jug. At that section, less water is being used, which increases the opacity of the paint, which then in turn increases the saturation and makes it a very strong focal point with high visual impact. So we need to talk about viewpoint. The viewpoint of this painting is very elevated. We're looking down at the items. Now, my feeling with that, the effect of that is that everything feels as important as something else. Like often in a regular traditional perspective, things in the midground are where your eye is drawn to. But in this painting, as I'm interested in the pears at the bottom as I am of the flowers up at the top. So you probably would round that up with something about an explanation saying that this leads to a more harmonious painting again, and your eyes led around the artwork and is able to naturally find focal points to enjoy. My last tip on viewpoint would be that a curious thing happens as you go above everything. It's that the shape of the objects becomes more obvious. So take a plate, it looks less like an oval and more like a full circle. And this creates a kind of rhythm throughout the artwork where we're sort of led by these rectangles and circles. I think it's really quite clever and it's a natural way, again, of leading your eye around the painting and picking out focal points as you go. Okay, I do hope that was helpful. Good luck.